two nuclear powers attacked us. We're still standing tall. They destroyed 2-3 facilities, but they did not obliterate our knowledge, our science. They killed scientists, but they didn't kill the science. They didn't kill the know-how.
Dr. Mohammad Javad Zarif, thank you very much for being on the record.
Good to be with you.
You know, it's been a decade since the nuclear deal. You were received in Tehran, I remember, as a hero when you signed the deal. And later on, you start being accused. Some even said that you were a traitor. Do you have any regrets regarding this deal?
No, I don't. I think even as I was negotiating the deal, I was called a traitor. Even before starting the deal, I was called a traitor. So if you want to listen to the people, you will not be able to accomplish anything. People will have their own ideas, and they have the right to have their own ideas. And I believe as long as they express them in a meaningful, rational way, it's good. Nothing is perfect. The fact that I don't regret that I was involved in the JCPOA doesn't mean that JCPOA is perfect. No deal is perfect, because every deal requires give and take. And no give and take is perfect. When you give, it's not perfect. But the point is, it's not realistic to expect to have a deal, to have an agreement that is all take.
I've heard you on several occasions, and even I read articles you wrote or books saying that, you know, diplomacy is mainly to prevent war. And this is something everyone knows. But at the end, there was a war and Iran was attacked.
Yes, but that was not because of the JCPOA. That was because of the death of the JCPOA. We delayed that war. Everybody believed and told us after we signed the JCPOA that a war was imminent. And at least what we could do was to prevent that war from taking place. We could have prevented the war that actually took place. It's not because of the JCPOA, it's because of our failure to recognize the fact that the only alternative to an agreement was confrontation. An agreement, and I think that confrontation was costly for all, including for the United States, certainly for Israel, and certainly for Iran. Now, the cost for Iran is rational. Why? Because we didn't start it. Had Iran started this war, it would have been irrational.
Well, some say that this rationality that Iran adopted over the years is one of the reasons why it was attacked.
No, not really. The reason we were attacked has nothing to do with the victim. The reason is the aggressor. Now, Israel recently attacked Syria. The new Syrian government, I think, bent over backward to show to the Israelis that it wanted to cooperate with Israel, but it was nevertheless attacked. The other countries, I mean, Syria under Bashar was attacked. Syria under Jolani or Ashara was attacked. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what type of approach you adopt. Iran was attacked under a hardline government. Iran was attacked under a more, let's say, middle ground government.
But doesn't Iran, in some, let me say, perspective, in some dimension, holds a bit of responsibility for such situation? I mean, the escalation, because Iran over the past years was projecting power every time, simulating power. And if we get back to what was happening with the nuclear program, in some occasions, Iran enriched uranium to even 60%, and there were 20%. And doesn't this create a kind of a threat?
If somebody wants to commit aggression, they'll find an excuse. If had we not enriched to 60%, some people could have analyzed that Iran was too soft, and Israelis saw that Iran was afraid, and that's why they attacked. We enriched to 60%. Some people say we showed them our strength. Others will say you gave them an excuse. So whatever you do, people come up with an explanation. The fact of the matter is, Israel is an expansionist force. Israel is now talking about Greater Israel. It's publishing maps with territories of adjacent countries, even Saudi Arabia. I mean, entire Syria, entire Jordan, entire Lebanon, parts of Iraq, parts of Saudi Arabia, into Greater Israel. So instead of blaming the victims, instead of looking at the symptoms, we need to look at the cause. One good thing, and I've been participating in several meetings, both open and closed meetings. 2 years ago, had I participated in meetings with Westerners about the situation in the Middle East, they would say Iran is the major impediment to peace in the Middle East. Today, in 2 meetings, Iran was not even mentioned once. It's become clear what is the problem in this region. The problem before the revolution, after the revolution, has always been a regime that is based on expansion, occupation, repression, apartheid, segregation. Now you listen to everybody, they're talking about the actual cause. And I think that's a good thing.
But this comes after complete tsunami in the region,
Well, it comes,
in a moment, Iran was at least in different areas in the region, had influence in
now
Lebanon, in
Iran
Syria,
will continue to have influence. Let me tell you, I don't like to boast about killing people, but Iranian responses against Israel created fear among the entire Israeli population. Everybody in Israel was affected by Iranian self-defense in response to Israeli unprovoked attacks. In Iran, 22 provinces, we have 31, 22 out of our 31 provinces never heard a single bullet being fired at Iran. So there is a difference there is an asymmetry of vulnerability in this situation. So we're there. 2 nuclear powers attacked us. We're still standing tall. They destroyed 3 facilities, but they did not obliterate our knowledge. They did not obliterate our science. They killed scientists, but they didn't kill the science. They didn't kill the know-how.
Is this going to be used on the negotiation table? Right now, the Americans see that Iran doesn't have anything to give. So
well, they're wrong.
President Trump isn't really interested in getting back to the table.
Well, he will.
And there is no nuclear program
for the time
or enrichment
being,
anymore.
For the time being, Iran does not see the readiness and the willingness. Of course, President Trump is ready to talk, but they're not ready to negotiate. I think sooner or later, they'll wake up to the reality. This is not the first time. When in 2002 we started the nuclear negotiations, the Americans blocked. Because at that time we were not negotiating with the Americans, we were negotiating with the Europeans. And we suggested to the E3 very generous offers. The Americans blocked it. In 2013, in 8 years' time, I went back to assume the responsibility for nuclear negotiations. When I left, we only had 200 centrifuges. When I came back, we had 20,000 centrifuges. Of course, when I left, we had a 7% growth. When I came back, we had a minus 7% growth. So everybody lost. But the Americans came to realize that putting pressure would harm our economy, but would not change the nuclear program. If anything, it would augment the program, because we did some of these things like the 60%. Why did we do 60%? We didn't need 60%. We just did it to poke in the eyes of the Americans that you cannot bring us to our knees through pressure. I think the Americans have tried this time and again. They tried to put pressure on us, and we resisted by increasing, by exacerbating the cause.
They drew you to their game.
Not to their game. They drive us into resistance. It doesn't serve us. Doesn't serve them. It's not their game. It may be the Israeli game, because the Israelis do the securitization game, the Iranophobia game. And I think both the United States and Iran are drawn into this game. And that is why we need to talk. We need to engage in dialogue, because Israel is certainly running the American show. And now, thanks to Gaza, the Americans are waking up to that fact. More and more people in the United States. I mean, 10 years ago, when I talked about Israeli firsters, all my friends told me, don't use that word because it will be considered anti-Semitic. So I coined a different term, Netanyahu firsters, so that I won't be considered anti-Semitic. Now you see mainstream American media talking about Israeli firsters. That's because of the backfire, the boomerang effect of Israeli influence in American society. Israelis basically overdid it. And that's why they are facing now this huge reaction in the United States, in the West. I don't think in its past 70-year history, Israel was never as loathed in the West as it is now.
Everyone asks, why does Iran have a nuclear program? This is one question. Another question is, if you do not want a bomb, why do you need a nuclear program? And my question here is that, okay, we'll put aside all these things. Why doesn't Iran want a bomb?
Well, let me tell you why we want the nuclear program. Exactly because people tell us you cannot have a nuclear program.
But that's a reaction. That's just an reaction.
Yeah. You see,
but that's $500 billion of investment.
Well, $500 billion of investment for a country that is 7,000 years old. Its dignity is extremely important. You cannot tell Iranians that you are inferior. Iranians won't buy that. Well, there are a lot of Iranians who don't believe nuclear program is in our interest. But find any Iranian who will tell you that I am willing to be ordered by somebody what to do. Even if at the end of the day they're prepared to do it, they want to frame it in a different way, that I wasn't just accepting to be subjected to orders, to be dictated that I should do this or that. I recently had a speech at the American Arms Control Association, and I told them, if you try to analyze the Iranian nuclear program from the point of view of deterrence, you will be making a huge mistake. Because to be honest with you, the war showed that not only our nuclear program was not a deterrence, it was a target. But did we change our approach? No, because the lens through which the analysts looked at our nuclear program was the wrong lens. Now, look at that with the lens of dignity. We believed that nobody could tell us what we should do. Now they bomb us. That strengthens that resolve. Now, even those who did not believe we should have nuclear weapons now talk about even nuclear bomb. Mm-hmm. Now, there is a constraint, both ideological as well as realistic constraint. And I believe the leader has both the ideological barrier, because we believe weapons of mass destruction are against Islamic law, but he has a realistic barrier, because we cannot engage, and this showed, we cannot engage in either first strike capability deterrence or second strike capability deterrence against Israel or against the United States. It would have been different under the Shah, because the Shah wanted to establish superiority in the region against its neighbors. It was in alliance already with Israel and the United States.
Did the Shah want to bomb?
He might have.
Oh, really?
He might have. But it would have been two totally different strategic calculus. The strategic calculus of the Shah was a tributary of the major power that is the United States. Israel was another tributary of the same river. So these two would not clash. So they just make a fuss in order to get more concessions, more aid from the United States.
But some think that, whether Iran had a nuclear bomb, things would have been different and Iran wouldn't have been attacked.
Let me tell you, Israel has 200 nuclear bombs. Did it prevent Iran from responding? Did it prevent Hamas from October 7th? Hamas, the Palestinians, were faced with an existential threat. That is, Netanyahu going to the UN, showing a map, no Palestine. Mm. When you feel an existential threat, you react. You don't care whether the other side has a nuclear weapon. Did it come into our calculus when we wanted to respond to Israeli attacks that Israel had nuclear weapons? Would it have come to their calculus had we had nuclear weapons? I don't think so. Does it come to the calculus of Ukrainians when they're defending their country, that Russia is the second largest possessor of nuclear weapons?
Well, some say that the recent cooperation between Iran and Russia, especially the accusation that Iran was providing Russia with drones, and later on there was a plan to provide them with short-range ballistic missiles, was Iran's biggest foul in international relations and getting to play outside its area. And that's why Iran became more and more under the focus.
Well, today even the Americans are cloning our drones. There was an article a couple of days ago that the United States is producing the suicide drones that Iran produced because they're cheap and they're a good means. So, I may not agree with the policy that was adopted in the previous administration, and I believe the way the Europeans have dealt with Iran was partially caused by the Ukraine episode. But even before Ukraine episode, the Europeans supported us politically, but they couldn't deliver economically. I believe we should have taken advantage of their political support, and we did. We defeated American attempt to bring back the resolutions with 13 votes to 2. This time we lost it by 9 votes to 4. 9 votes against us. We had 13 votes in favor of us and 2 votes against us. Now we had 9 votes against us and only 4 votes. Part of it, or all of it, is due to the fact that we had alienated the Europeans. Fine. But the Europeans didn't do us a lot of good. I mean, they complied with Trump's illegal withdrawal from the JCPOA. They weren't even able to create a barter mechanism for Iran to...
Well, they tried to do the Instex, the vehicle.
I mean, Instex...
And it didn't work.
Yeah, that was a barter mechanism. I mean, primitive.
Yeah.
But that shows how powerless the Europeans had made themselves to be vis-a-vis the United States. I don't believe Europe is powerless vis-a-vis the United States. But once you want to be subservient, once you want to make yourself powerless, then there's no cure.
You know, there's an issue, a very important issue here with respect to relations back to Russia. You know, Iran and Russia had a kind of coordination. I'm not going to call it alliance, because it doesn't seem both countries are allies. They're more of, they have intersection of interests.
Yeah.
So there was an intersection of interests in Syria.
I think in reality there was more intersection of interest between Russia and Turkey in Syria than between Russia and Iran.
And that's why at the end the Russians now are enjoying good relations with the new Syrian administration.
In the Astana process, although there were the three of us, Russia and Turkey, had bilateral agreement. In allowing the terrorists, Takfiris, to go to Idlib, it was against our advice, but it was between Russia and Syria. In allowing Syrian troops to come into northern, Turkish troops to come into northern Syria, it was between Russia and Turkey. And all of this was during the time that Iran and Russia were supposedly on the same side and Turkey was on the other side. So I think the collaboration was between, we did cooperate with the Russians in defeating the Takfiri terrorists. But in terms of strategic collaboration in Syria, at least the outcome, if you want to judge it by the outcome, Russia worked more closely with Turkey than it worked with Iran.
Doctor, but you know, the Iranian vision of what was happening in Syria and kind of relying on one person, which is Bashar al-Assad, and not on institutions. At the same time, I don't know, I mean, there is a real grievance here from Syrians that Iran was stereotyping all the opposition by describing them as takfiris, as terrorists, while most of them were not like that.
That's true, and that is why immediately after I assumed office in 2013, we devised a plan exactly in the lines that you're talking about, to have an immediate ceasefire, broaden the base of the government, that is, bring in all the opposition elements that were not conducting terrorist operations, revise the constitution, reform the constitution, and then hold elections. This plan was developed between myself, the late General Soleimani, with the consent of Bashar al-Assad through said Hassan Nasrallah. So I took the plan to New York. See, I went to New York almost 3 weeks into my time as foreign minister. And I presented the plan to Ahmed Dawood. I remember there's a picture of us walking on the banks of the East River because he thought that the UN building was tapped. So he asked me to go outside. And the problem with the plan, from his point of view, was what will happen to Bashar? Mm-hmm. And I said, the Syrian people will have to decide what will happen to Bashar. We cannot make that decision. Let us expand the government, bring the opposition into the government, let us revise the constitution, and then we have an election. Bashar will be running, but others can be running too.
But you know, within the Ba'ath party, it's not going to be a democratic election.
Well, not with a revised constitution and a broadened government. Mm-hmm. Then it wouldn't be a Ba'ath government, it would be a broadened government. But he opposed. After Bashar was able to push Takfiris out of Damascus and Aleppo and other important places, and we had the Astana process, I suggested to Bashar in one of my meetings that we need to be serious about the Astana process. We need to engage with the opposition. Unfortunately, the victory made him, I don't want to use, arrogant, but...
Drunk?
Yeah.
He was drunk with victory?
Drunk with victory. And he tried to basically procrastinate the political process.
How much?
And they're very good. The Syrians, including this government, are very good in procrastinating. Sooner or later, people will come to realize that the Shara, has a much more appealing, at least is presented in a much more appealing posture. But at the end of the day, he is doing exactly the same, procrastinating.
How much did Iran lose by the fall of Bashar al-Assad? Especially that it came just a couple of weeks after the ceasefire in Lebanon, the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's weakened. The whole axis, is in a situation of paralysis.
You see, in terms of perception, certainly Iran lost. In terms of reality, question is, I have always supported Iran's support for Hezbollah. And I continue to believe that Iran has to provide support to the just resistance against Israeli occupation, aggression, genocide, and apartheid. However...
Including Hamas and Jihad in Palestine?
Including Palestine.
Yeah.
However, give me a single instance when Hezbollah, Hamas, Jihad, others fired a single bullet, not in their own defense, but in our defense. A single instance. If Hezbollah fought in Syria, it wasn't to help us. We were fighting in Syria to help them, not the other way around.
How?
Huh?
How?
So that they can get support, so that their support line would not be cut.
But that support line is coming from Iran.
Huh?
It's coming from Iran.
It's coming from Iran. We provided support, but we didn't get any support. What do proxies do? Proxies carry out your policy. But Hezbollah didn't carry out our policy. It was carrying out its own policy. We helped them. And we paid the price for it. We were attacked for the fact that we were supporting Hezbollah. We were attacked for the fact that we were supporting Hamas. You build a line of defense through proxies, not a line of vulnerability.
Well, Dr. Wali Nasser describes this as a forward defense.
Well, was it? A forward defense shoots at least a single bullet in your defense. Did they? When Israel attacked Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, did the Palestinians take measures against Israel? Did Hezbollah take measures?
They were in a war. They were already in the middle of a war.
But did they do anything? Because this was an act. I mean, they were our proxies. Yeah. And this was an act against their so-called master.
Do you believe in the term proxies?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I believe there are proxies. The people who were in Idlib were certainly proxies. Because when asked, they fought in Libya. When asked, they fought in Somalia. Even they fought against Armenia with Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh. That's what a proxy does. You tell them to do what to do. A proxy is not a resistance force that is defending its own country, and you're giving them help. I do not call that a proxy. Now, if Iran doesn't exist, would the Palestinian cause be dead? Would it end?
What do you think?
No. Because the Palestinian cause is caused by occupation, not by Iran. Proxies fight on the master's behalf.
But there are accusations that Iran redefined the conflict, redefined the struggle, kind of added to this struggle a new layer.
Well, Iran inspired resistance. So for the first time in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, Arabs were capable of pushing Israel out of their territory in 2000 from Lebanon. After 18 years of occupation, the Palestinians were able to push Israel out of their territory in Gaza after I don't know how long, without giving Israel a single concession. That was inspiration. We couldn't do the fighting for them. What we did was we gave them inspiration. Let me tell you something else. When was Hezbollah established? When was Hamas? 82. Hamas, 87, 88. Islamic Jihad, 82, 83. That time, Iran was in dire need of weaponry itself. It couldn't provide weapons to others. What we provided was inspiration. Inspiration from the fact that you can resist the biggest power. I think that may have changed the nature of the Arab-Israeli conflict by inspiring people to stand up for their rights. But there had to be a cause to be inspired. You cannot inspire in the empty vacuum. I mean, but the problem is people are missing the cause. And that is why it was a pleasant surprise for me that in closed meetings that I attended, nobody mentioned Iran, because Iran was not the cause of trouble. Now, the United States in its national security strategy names Iran three times. Only 3 times. It wants to stick to the orthodoxy of calling Iran the greatest threat. But the strategy shows that for them, the greatest threat is Europe. Yeah, look, read the strategy. If you read the strategy, the concern for the United States comes from Europe. And that is the gift the Europeans got from the United States for shooting themselves in the foot and exercising the so-called snapback.
Well, this is very interesting because it takes us to another discussion. Is this national security assessment, is it an establishment assessment or it's a Trump assessment?
It seems to me it's a Trump assessment. Well, the establishment theorizes it, but it's a Trump assessment. President Trump is probably one of the few in the U.S. line of presidents that is not controlled by the establishment.
He asked to meet you
Twice. Yeah.
Why didn't you go?
Two reasons.
Wouldn't that have rid Iran from such a situation right now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think about it in all honesty, because you always have to review your past. First of all, I was not authorized. And I'm a risk taker. But when I'm not authorized, I have to have a good risk to take. Mm-hmm. Both times that Trump asked me to meet him, once in the White House and once in Biarritz in France, Bolton and Pompeo were in charge. And I knew that with Trump, you could only reach basically a photo op. A photo op for me was suicide. But I was prepared to commit suicide had it had any positive effect. But a 2-page document would not have resolved the Iran-US problem. I believe that the Iran-US web of misperceptions, conflicts, requires a more thorough
You lived in both countries. I mean, some see Iran see you an American.
Yeah.
And you are an Iranian negotiating with the Americans. Weren't you able to bridge this gap between?
Well, I think we did make progress in the JCPOA. Not me, but the atmosphere, the fact that the Iranians had shown to the United States that sanctions could not achieve the outcome. Mm-hmm. I mean, sanctions are not designed ostensibly to hurt people. They're designed to change policy. And sanctions have never been able to change Iranian policy. And the fact that 73% of the population went to vote for President Rouhani showed that sanctions had not disenfranchised the people from the government.
Yeah, but 41% voted for Pezeshkian.
41%.
The turnout. The turnout was very low.
First round.
The first round, yeah.
The second round, the turnout was much higher.
Yeah.
People were dissatisfied with the outcome. But in 2013, when we were able to start the negotiations, it was because 73% of the people came out. I believe, and that is why in every recommendation I give, I believe that although we have to negotiate, the first priority must be to keep the people on board.
I mean, this is the big question. There is kind of misconceptions, and I think there is a gap also between the system in Iran and the people in Iran.
Oh, of course. Of course there is a gap, and I think everybody understands that gap, and everybody should do their best to remedy that gap, to bring it together, bring them closer. We've heard it in the statements by the president, by the leader, by everybody. Now, there may be differences of views on how to do it, but certainly everybody recognizes, I mean, the leader has said it many times, even military people, that what defeated Israel in the 12-day war was not our military equipment. Of course, they did have an impact, but it was the people. I mean, the people disappointed Israel, because Israel, based on that misconception that Iranian population is not is not very happy with the government, believed that once Israelis attack us,
people made their part.
Yeah.
So that they were like around the flag. They were there.
Yeah,
because they believed in their country.
Yeah, they believe in their country.
The establishment giving them in return.
No, the people. I mean, the establishment owes the people a lot, because it was the people who resisted Saddam Hussein, it was the people who resisted sanctions, and it was the people who resisted the Israeli aggression. So it's the people. And we owe them. I mean, I'm not in the establishment anymore, but the establishment owes the people a great deal. And I for my part, I'm certainly indebted to the people, and at times ashamed of them because I wasn't able to perform as well as I should have in defending the livelihoods, the rights, and the welfare of the people. So that's granted that the people play the most important part.
What has this war changed in Iran?
I think the war has created this feeling of unease or unsettled situation where you're lingering between war and peace. But I think the situation is the same on the other side too. We should talk about the consequences had we started the war. These are questions that Israelis must ask themselves. What did they gain? Except for an anxious population, a lot of anxiety in the entire population. What did they gain out of this war?
Dr. Mohammad Javad Zarif, thank you very much for being on the record.
Thank you.